Good morning, and welcome to Chapel Chat. I'm Pastor Kevin Little, and this is the sanctuary at Fisher United Methodist Church. This is October, quite possibly the worst month of the year for me, for many reasons. But even more significantly, tomorrow is October 28th, which is also referred to as Cancer Day in my family. That's the day that I was diagnosed with cancer way back in 2009, which seems like an entire lifetime ago. I've had two interesting conversations about Cancer Day this past week and why I keep it in my head. The first was in my confirmation class. I'd mentioned something briefly, and it prompted one of the kids to ask, well, why on earth would you celebrate that? The second was in a conversation with my family about time travel and how I'd love to go back in time and make changes in my life that kept me from getting cancer. That prompted a question of whether I'd really want to do that because I wouldn't be a preacher and have the relationship with God that I have if it wasn't for cancer, which is, completely accurate. So the response for the first question of why I celebrate Cancer Day is fairly easy. It's not celebrating. It's more like Memorial Day. It's something I observe. It's something you pay attention to and respect that it happened. It's good to remember it and to look back on how I've gotten here, and it has even helped me to learn to appreciate the experience to some degree. The second question was much harder because there's a lot going on that most people don't know about, can't see, or is just really easy to forget. It's really easy to look at where my life is now from the outside and think that whatever I went through 13 years ago was completely worth it. But for those of you who have never been through them, cancer treatments are not fun, and they are terrible for your health. So I'm going to run through my list of side effects that I still suffer from, and I don't even know if I'm going to come up with all of them in the process here. But the first one that stands out today is that my legs are killing me. They're achy and sore today and have been for days. Something about the chemo mixture I received has caused an odd and unpredicted side effect where my legs just ache, almost all the time. Some days are better than others. I also lost a lot of stamina, which caused me to walk with a cane for the better part of a year after my treatments, and when my legs get really bad, I still need it. I have some great stories about my cane and getting it to Israel and back if you want to chat about it sometime, because I really needed it there. Another problem with my legs is restless leg syndrome. To keep me from having a severe allergic reaction to one of my chemo meds, they gave me a heavy dose of Benadryl and an IV before I could start that chemo. That caused my legs to convulse for most of the rest of that 4-hour-long treatment. And that's never gone away. If I sit in a certain position or lay flat, my legs just start to twitch and jump even today. But unless you see me with my cane, you'd never know that these things were an issue for me. The second issue that stands out pretty good today is the amount of stiffness in my neck. Since my radiation treatments, my neck has spent the last 13 years with the muscles just really tight and on the verge of a cramp. Some days loosen up a little bit, but on bad ones, I can't turn my head much. It's always an exciting time to leave the chiropractor's office and be able to check my blind spot in the car for a couple of weeks. My motorcycle accident in 2014 definitely didn't help this problem. Adding whiplash to my existing neck issues just wasn't fun. And while I'm thinking about my neck, you might remember that I almost choked to death in April and had to have an ambulance called. That's because radiation killed my epiglottis, keeping it from closing my throat when I swallow. Good times. Radiation also killed my thyroid gland, destroyed my teeth, and literally killed part of my tongue. I just woke up one day and couldn't speak as well as I could the day before. The doctor looked in my mouth and, yep, that's atrophy. Part of my tongue died, and there's no getting it back. So now I have a job where I basically speak for a living with a host of issues that cause speech problems. And just like the atrophy of my tongue, I woke up one day and couldn't hear as well. Permanent hearing damage as a side effect of the chemo, and on top of that, it triggered tinnitus. Now, for those of you who don't know what that is, it's a ringing sound in my ears that is actually caused by my brain recognizing that my hearing is gone and kind of trying to fill that void, kind of like a phantom limb syndrome. I have two different atonal frequencies happening in my head at all times. So picture locking yourself in a room with something playing the emergency broadcast tone for an hour. Then picture that every minute of every day for 13 years. It's the first thing I'm aware of in the morning and the last thing I'm aware of before I finally fall asleep. It's distracting and it's spectacularly frustrating. And finally, the last thing on my pity party list today is chemo brain, also known as chemo fog. That's the side effect that actually damages the way your brain works, making it harder to think. Since my treatments, I typically say that I've lost 10 points off of my IQ. And this is where you insert a joke about whether or not I had them to spare. I did. But it's spectacularly frustrating to feel information just on the other side of an invisible wall. Stuff that I know, but can't get my brain to access. Names, people, events, childhood memories, all gone. Simple words sometimes get locked away one minute and are accessible the next. Some days are better than others, but every day since my treatment started has been affected by this, and like everything else, it will never get better. So I've had to learn to live with all of this every day and to resign myself to the fact that I'm going to live with it every day for the rest of my life. Some days I'm good with it. Some days are worse than others, and that's why it's a complicated question about whether or not I'd throw all of this away for the chance to not feel this way. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for cancer. It literally took cancer to convince me that God was real and that God was worth knowing. So even if I had softened at some point and eventually re-embraced the Christian faith, I still wouldn't have become a pastor if it wasn't for cancer. And so I'm grateful for all of this, at least as much as I can be, because for the most part, I do love my life and where I'm at right now. But on the other hand, the thought of waking up without this constant noise in my head that aches in my legs, not being able to have a thought process properly, and not feeling like I'm fighting through a fog just to think of something, sounds like a wonderful life too. Thanks for joining me for another Chapel Chat and listening while I whine a little bit. I'll see you again next time. Have a great week.